So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Jesse to start explaining how Spaces, Cisco Spaces transforms education environments. Over to you, Jesse.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks everybody for the time. So yeah, we're going to be relatively quick here as we got a lot to cover. But as Mark pointed out, it is imperative now that we do as much as possible with this, I guess, few resources. That seems to be what has come up in our customer conversations. And so today we're going to learn about a ton of different architects and infrastructures, and then how Spaces plays into that. So I am the account executive for all of Spaces for all of Canada. So with that being said, Cisco Spaces, think about it as it sits on top of everything we're gonna talk about today. So whether that's the APs and that connectivity piece, perhaps you have Meraki sensors in your environment. You maybe even have some WebEx video endpoints too that you might Blackboard with or whiteboard rather with and utilize for communicating messages, displaying various communications. And so Spaces sits on top of essentially everything we're going to talk about today. What we're trying to do with Spaces is simply solve for as many use cases as possible. Again, by sitting on top of or overlaying above the network and those other architecture pieces from Cisco and Meraki, and then provide that one pane of glass so we could understand what's going on within our buildings, within our footprints, our campus footprints, and then being able to drive ROI-based decisions, automate rule creation around perhaps density thresholds, or automate building HVAC controls as well. So Spaces has been around about 7 years, 14 billion plus square feet being managed today, 350,000 plus buildings that have Spaces deployed in them today. That includes Cisco. And so how does this relate to education? Well, again, I mentioned that we're just trying to solve for use cases utilizing the investments that you all have made today. So right off the top here, the top real 6 use cases that we see within education for Spaces. And so seamless Wi-Fi onboarding, making that very easy for our students, faculty, and staff to be able to connect to the wireless network frictionless or seamlessly. We want to enhance the student, staff, and visitor experience, whether that's indoor wayfinding or automated attendance. Campus safety, so we could talk about occupancy, density thresholds. Maybe it's a campus security or a staff duress situation in which we have to wear perhaps a panic button or something of that sort. So we're able to compute that kind of emergency situation and be able to provide that data and location to the authorities. Sustainable campuses, I mentioned automating HVAC situations or systems using the data that we are providing or being provided by, whether it's those wireless APs, maybe it's a Meraki sensor. Improving student and visitor engagement. So again, maybe it's context-aware engagements via, a WebEx board that's in a lobby, right? Hey, today we're offering this in the cafeteria or something similar. And then optimizing campus operations. Again, we're just trying to automate processes, allow you to have as much data at your fingertips based on an investment that you made to then make better decisions for your environment, your campus, et cetera. How are we doing that? I mentioned we sit on top of, in the cloud, the overlay operating system across or on top of these architects. So we have those Meraki access points to our left. That's going to provide us things like occupancy. Obviously, I mentioned that Meraki cameras are just bringing or being brought into the fold as far as Spaces is concerned. So we're going to be utilizing those cameras for occupancy. So open areas, we want to make sure that we're understanding, again, space usage, utilization, automating processes like custodial crew, or perhaps it's a security team that we can automate a ticket to once a certain threshold or occupancy threshold has been met. I did mention too, some of these Cisco video endpoints. We have customers that have these boards in classrooms. So where these are present, we could detect actual occupancy counts. In addition to that too, with our technology, we're embedding environmental sensors into many of these hardware devices, even the APs, and those environmental metrics are then allowing us to automate processes around the HVAC system. I mentioned third-party sensors we could onboard. There's an IoT device marketplace. Those Meraki things sensors, those MT sensors, that's invaluable data that Spaces collects and then pushes back into the dashboard. And again, allows you as maybe it's a facilities team to understand exactly what it looks like as far as space utilization. And so this is how Spaces is collecting the data and from what various hardware infrastructure that you might have already invested in. And so I'll jump into the dashboard quickly here. So this is the Spaces dashboard. So each one of these tiles represents a unique application. Some of these are focused around occupancy. Some of these are more IT focused, like asset tracking. Hey, somebody lost a school laptop, perhaps. And we could help find that based on our asset location tracking that can be found here within the Spaces dashboard. I'm going to fly through some of these very briefly. I know we're at a small amount of time in order to speak to Spaces. So again, what we're doing is providing things like occupancy here. So this is right now data, what's going on in our environment, how many people are in a particular location or building. We could get this down to zone level. We could set these density rules. So maybe a cafeteria is a zone. Hey, once the cafeteria hits a threshold of 90% or greater, we can automate a ticket to the custodial team, perhaps. So as we move on as well, maybe it's important to understand what that occupancy or space utilization data looks like more on a month-to-month basis to understand more so trends. And so we do that with behavior metrics. So now this becomes a month-over-month view of what occupancy and space utilization looks like. And again, I am moving fastly, but if anybody has, again, questions, we could always set up a follow-up call to speak specifically to Spaces. And I believe that's going to be the same for any architecture that we're talking about today. Location analytics, even more so custom reporting available to us as far as those metrics are concerned, those occupancy metrics. Sorry, this is a demo data account too, or a demo account. So data is a little wonky here. So, but as we can see here, we can understand visitor segmentation versus maybe student population versus employee populations with this data and this dashboard. And then one of the other things that we're doing too, so I mentioned those Meraki sensors and those being critical to making sure that our defined areas or our campus is health or safety or healthy from an environmental standpoint. So whether that's environmental air quality, temperature, humidity, all that stuff we're able to track in Spaces as we're collecting that data. So I'll show you what that looks like briefly. So we'll take a look at our San Francisco office. So again, at the top of the ribbon, we have those various sensors either built into some of our devices and hardware pieces. Those Meraki Things sensors that are providing us environmental data points, like the Meraki Thing 15, that is capturing these 5 environmental metrics that you see above. We're capturing that. We're understanding too, from a 3D map standpoint or heat map, what it looks like in your particular building in terms of ebbs and flows, how many assets are on the network. You can also look at this from a 24-hour view and perspective, just to understand what pathway analysis might look like, what areas of our buildings and Spaces are being utilized accordingly. But again, moving to 3D maps is really the future for all of our customers as we look to modernize our various Spaces, be able to take all of those data points, push it back into one pane of glass in which IT could utilize this. Again, facilities team, anybody that has a care about these various data points and want to be able to action on them, whether it's an ROI decision to automate the HVAC system, just the rule creation for perhaps security or a custodial team, we could help automate those processes. And then things like, I go back to this too, and unfortunately, sign of the times, but staff duress has become one of those more gripping use cases in which Spaces is helping out with, panic buttons that are part of that IoT marketplace that I discussed previous. And so when you think about Spaces, and we're going to talk a lot about those other architects today, Spaces is really the great collector of data in the cloud, if you will. Open API, so we could push any data point that is coming into Spaces out to an existing API connection that exists in our partner ecosystem today. Or you might have your own native dashboard or data lake in which we could push data into as well. That would be, certainly beneficial to those that have a care about those data points and those kinds of decisions. I mentioned IoT. And so with that being said, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Juliana. She's going to talk all things IoT, Meraki, MT, MV. And so with that, thanks for the brief amount of time. I'm happy to have a follow-up discussion with anybody that has questions or want more details around spaces. But Juliana, I'm going to hand it over to you.